Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us with today's Carroll Chamber of Commerce Legislative Forum. This as a virtual event. Unfortunately, we aren't able to be meet in person and with the conditions as is. I also would like to thank the City of Carroll for hosting the event today. I'm Hubert Hageman from the Carroll Chamber Legislative Committee. The format of today's program will include prepared questions of the legislators and questions submitted by email to the Carroll Chamber office. The forum will take approximately 1 hour. With that, we have today with us Senator Craig Williams and Representative Brian Best. And I want to thank them for attending today's forum. We appreciate you taking your time out to be with us. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Representative Best for his opening comments that he has and tell us a little bit about what's going on this last week or so with the new session. Brian?
Thank you, Hubert, and thank you to the Carroll Area Chamber for hosting this event. This is always fun and I enjoy it. First of all, I'll start out with a little background. My committees this year are Commerce, I'm on the Ag Committee, and I'm on Labor. So the Ag and Labor committees are new committees for me. I've been down there for 6 years now, and this is the first time I have not been on the Human Resources Committee. And sometimes I think they just take you off committees just to give you a little bit different feel for what's going on and get some new blood. And so I'm no longer on Human Resources. As a chair of transportation, just some transportation issues that I think will come up this year. And the main one is hands-free. The texting and making phone calls on your phone are probably equally as dangerous. We did a texting bill about 3 years ago, I believe, which passed, but it was so hard for the public service folks like the police and sheriffs to know, in highway patrol, to know what the intention is. So if a person can say they were making a call, then they would not get a ticket. And I think the cell phone issue, I've always been for free liberty and things like that, but I think this does, I think we do need to put out a hands-free law because a lot of people are dying unnecessarily. And I know I was on my way from the Capitol one day, and the traffic was stopped, and I could see a girl coming up from behind me who looked like she was really young, and I could even see that she was on her phone. And as I was looking in the rearview mirror, I thought she was going to just run right into the back end of my car. And luckily, she figured it out in time. And then 2 wheels go up in the air as she's trying to make the stop. And it was kind of scary. And that's just kind of what happens. And people don't mean to cause accidents, I've realized. But I think this is a good law. And I'm going to do my best to see that it goes through this year. Something else I just want to bring up is talk about the condition of the state speech by the governor. And in her speech, the main things that she wanted to get across, and this is a great thing for rural Iowa, is $90 million for broadband over the next 4 years. And if we can do that, it's going to make a huge difference, especially for rural Iowa. So this is something that I support. $90 million is a lot. And so to get us there, and in fact, I said that wrong, it's $90 million per year. Which is like around $400 million, I believe, is what she wants to do. So that's a lot of money, and but I think it's something that we should definitely give some thought to. Also, in her speech, she mentioned face-to-face classroom, and that being something that she'd like us to look at to give all parents the ability to say to a school that we want our kids to be in school and not be home. And so we're going to be taking a look at that too. I believe that, and I think it's pretty much scientifically known that if kids are in a classroom. They learn so much better than what they do over the internet and things like that. So I support her in that one also. To show how serious she is about the broadband issue, the Iowa House has actually formed an IT committee, which is a new committee that was not there in the past. And what that IT committee is going to do is, part of that is to get the state caught up, because our IT at the state level is way behind in our ability to just do things that we need to do, like tax refunds and things like that. That system is pretty much depleted in all realms of government. So we have to take a look at getting our computer system better, and it's got a huge price tag. I'm sure it's going to be over $100 million to get everything caught up, because every department is behind in that area. And so that IT committee will be looking at that, but it will also be looking at all things that have to do with IT, which is obviously is broadband. And so getting into the rural areas is a great priority, and I definitely agree with that. Also, that was on Tuesday that the governor gave her address, and then on Wednesday, Susan Christensen, Chief Justice, gave a condition of the judiciary, which was very well received. And the thing that she really pointed to the most that she's really proud of is Iowa's family court system. And the Iowa family court system, I believe, is one of the best in the nation. And what it really does is gives families an opportunity to get things turned around with the help of a judge. But it's not really a typical courtroom situation. The judge is kind of a counselor and a person that works along with a person from Department of Human Services, and they try to keep that child at home with the parents unless the parents or parent really does not make the right changes, and that they give them an opportunity to get their lives turned around. And the thing is that they would like to see them go into extended family as opposed to foster care also, which is good, I believe. And it gives the parents maybe a little time to get their lives turned around. And at that time, the child can come back into the home, where once you put them in the foster system, sometimes it's just a real wreck. And sometimes, I'm not saying the foster system doesn't work, but being with family is always the best outcome for a child anytime. So that's my opening statement.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Next, we'll have Senator Craig Williams talk about his first week, and maybe you can even mention a few things that you were surprised at, that you thought you were going to see down there, and maybe surprised that you didn't get to see when you're down there. With that, Senator Williams.
You're setting me up, Hubert. Hey, good morning, everyone. Craig Williams, State Senator in District 6. My district covers Audubon, Carroll, Sac, Buena Vista, and Eastern Crawford County. So it's a big territory. Enjoyed my first week in the state Senate, and I can't tell you how blessed I am to be a part of it. If you haven't been to the Capitol building, you really need to get in there sometime and take a look around. It's incredible. I wonder sometimes if it's even possible to build a building like that today. I think if that building were gone, we'd be in a tin can somewhere, which, not against tin cans, but it's quite a beautiful site. My new clerk used to do tours in the Capitol, and so on our first day, we went up to the top of the Capitol by ourselves and looked around outside, and it's quite an amazing place. And you just can't walk around there without feeling the history and some of the things that have gone on there. Some good, some not so good, but a lot of history in that building. So I'm very thrilled to be a part of it. Things I was surprised at, I guess. I guess I wasn't really surprised, but it started off awfully slow for me. I'm used to getting in and getting dirty quickly, and we're doing meetings with gavel in, gavel out, a lot of pomp and circumstance, and welcomes and things of that nature. Most meetings are about 6 minutes long, and out you go. So that was a little bit surprising to me, and I really wanted to get to work right away. And that just didn't happen. Now, not to be disappointed, before Thursday came, this is the pile of the 36 bills that were put on my desk, some of which may or may not ever see the light of day, but some interesting stuff in there and some light reading. And I have actually gone through all of them. Haven't read them word for word, but a couple of them caught my eye, and I'll try to bring those to light in a moment. I'm on the committees for commerce. I'm on the local government committee, and wildly, I'm on the appropriations committee. And I really love all of those committees. I think these are great places for me to be at. But the appropriations is one of them that I think is going to be the most interesting. And I'm not sure if they put me on appropriations because I've got a good background in finance and budgeting, or if because I'm new and don't know enough to what to approve or not approve yet. But if it was the latter, they'll be disappointed, because I'll dig in and find out what we're sending money to and try to make sure that we use taxpayer money appropriately. I'm also the vice chair for the Government Oversight Committee, and that's a committee that just looks at different things that have happened in the government and can actually do some investigations and call out problems within the government. So that'll be kind of interesting. That committee has notoriously not met very much over the last several years, but I think we're going to meet a little bit more in this session. Also on the subcommittee, the Appropriations Subcommittee for Agriculture and Natural Resources. Tuesday was the governor's condition of the state address, and we all attended that. At least all the Republicans attended it, or it was very lightly attended by the Democrats, unfortunately. But I thought she gave a great talk, great speech, and more than just a speech, I think she had a lot of substance in it as well. A lot of things that I think will matter for this district as part of Iowa. Number one on that list was rural broadband, and not to correct my friend in the house too much here, but it's actually $150 million a year for 3 years. It's a 5-year plan, but they're going to spend the budget asks for $150 million a year for the next 3 years, so $450 million total. And of course, that hasn't been appropriated yet. That's what the governor has asked for, but it's a lot of money. And you think you've got 3.2 or 3.3 million people in Iowa, and you divide that out of the $450 million, we're talking about a pretty good chunk of money per person towards rural broadband. And it's important. We're number 2 in the country, and I mean the bottom number 2 in the country for broadband access and internet speed. So there's 48 states ahead of us in access. And we've got, I think, 33 counties that are virtual deserts when it comes to rural broadband, where you just can't get access. Everybody can get satellite access through HughesNet and some other ones, but it's not very reliable, and they shut you off in a very short period of time. And when we sent kids home this year and said we're going to have to do virtual learning sessions, if you didn't have really good broadband access, you weren't going to get the virtual learning that you needed. And virtual learning had problems on its own, but this made it extra difficult. And think if you had 3 kids at home and all of them are trying to share the internet at the same time for their class, it's just not very usable. I think for the rural areas, as people begin to work more from home, and my son's a software developer in Omaha, and his company has said, we're not going to have you come back. We want you to work from home virtually. This has worked out pretty well for them. And they're not coming back to the office again. So if that's the case, he can work here. Why does he need to live in Omaha? He can work in Manning, Iowa. That's a hint for you, son. Come home. And we'll have good broadband access for him to be able to work from any part of the country. And I think that's good for everybody. We can bring people back home to Iowa and let them live in a great place like the rural communities. Governor hit on education quite a bit, and not naturally so, because it's more than 50% of the state's budget. She talked about the education savings accounts, which I think are going to be very important, and making sure that every child in Iowa has a quality education regardless of income or zip code. And I think that's something everybody should support, is making sure that every child has a good quality education, or at least access to it. I did say that I would go back to something here on the bills, and I wish that we weren't doing this virtually, because I could ask, how many farmers do we have in the room? And of all these bills, one of them that really hit my eye, well, a couple of them, but one of them was the request to outlaw class of chemistry called neonicotinoids, and most farmers probably won't recognize it by that name, but they might recognize it by poncho or cruiser or gaucho, which is on virtually every corn seed sold in the state of Iowa, and probably 80 or 90% of the soybeans sold in the state of Iowa. And the bill just calls to outlaw it. There's no replacement for it. They're just going to outlaw it. And it's an insecticide that goes on the seed that protects the seed when it's in the ground. Those are the kind of things that they catch my attention, and I'm not on the ag committee, but I'll pop my nose in there from time to time and make sure I know where that's going. The other bill was to eliminate dicamba, which has got some issues. There's no doubt about it, but that's something I'll be watching as well. I probably used more than my 5 minutes. I apologize for that, but thank you. And again, I appreciate from the people of this district for letting me be a part of it.
Okay, well, thanks, Senator. With that, we'll go to the questions that were submitted to the Chamber office. And the first one is, with the state seeing a budget surplus this year, what plans are being laid out for the additional funds available? And I guess I'll start with you, Senator.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's no shortage of plans for spending money in the state. If we've got a $300 million surplus in 2020, and I think that the estimate is for $396 million surplus in 2021. And there are plenty of plans on how to spend that money. This particular document here, I don't know how many, maybe 100 pages, is the governor's budget, and then an equal number of pages or so from the Legislative Services Agency analyzing the governor's budget. And I got this on Thursday, so I apologize. I haven't read all of it yet. But I think the number one thing that I saw in there was the governor's, and she mentioned it in her speech, about eliminating some of the triggers that were put in 2018. And in the 2018 tax reduction bill, and I can't remember the name of the bill, there were 2 triggers in there that said, if and when the state of Iowa reaches this much income and something else happens, then we'll see an income tax reduction. And right now, we are not competitive with surrounding states on income taxes or corporate taxes. And so she would like to see those triggers removed and a quicker turnaround in income tax reduction to make Iowa more competitive with surrounding states. So that's one of them I think will hit. Again, I think there's no shortage of ideas on how to spend extra money. I'll say this, that I'm a little concerned. Some of the budget numbers are, they're estimates. I think it's a good group that put together the estimates, but they're difficult for me to comprehend, just thinking about how many businesses do you see that are closed, or how many businesses are on 25% or 50% activity. Personally, I did the numbers the other day, and my income is down over 50% from last year. And so there's got to be a lot of us like that. I didn't work any less. I just made less money. And if that's the case, at some point in time, that shoe will drop, and the income won't be where we think it is. So we're just going to keep a really close eye and more conservative budgeting, making sure that we're spending taxpayer money wisely, that we don't get out of line with the income that's coming in. So plans, it's all, the governor's got all her plans laid out, and when I get more involved in exactly how that is, I'll give you some better answer to that. But that's what I have to do.
Representative Best.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we'll still need to take a conservative approach, even though we do have those numbers that are showing that the state is doing very well, which I think does kind of go against what we see anecdotally. But at the same time, they've been correct up till now, which surprises me. So I'm not exactly sure why, but it seems like we're doing okay. One thing that we're going to have to look at, that is the RIF budget, which is probably going to be taken in quite a bit less than what it has in the past. The RIF budget is made up of money that comes mainly from the casinos, and casino gambling is down. And also with Nebraska passing a law that they would be able to put some of these in Omaha, we're going to see a lot of competition on the west side of the state. And so I think even with this next upcoming year, we know that the RIF budget is going to be down quite a bit, or the amount of money, the revenues, I should say, the revenues in the RIF will be down quite a bit. And there are some good things that we have to keep going in the RIF budget. And I think there's a question down the line that asks a little bit about those things like REAP and all those different things that we do, Main Street, all those things that we do in Iowa to help. And as a person who is a conservative with how we spend our money, I also realize that a lot of those things are going to help rural Iowa. And so we have to look at that. It's a double-edged sword if we decide we don't want to spend the money in there, how it might affect rural Iowa. So that's one area that I think the additional funds, hopefully we could maybe shore up a little bit of the RIF budget with that.
Okay, thank you. Representative, you alluded to a couple questions down a little further. One of them is healthcare providers have received funding through a temporary parity law for telehealth through the pandemic, which has been an important way for people to receive care, but it is just temporary. Do you see funding for telehealth being made permanent?
I think it's definitely a possibility. I would support it. What we have to realize, though, is as we make those things more available, they will get utilized more, which is a good thing. At the same time, it will probably have a little bit of an effect on the money that the state spends on the Medicaid population and things like that. But at the same time, I think it's very much needed in the school system where we have so much mental health issues with kids that didn't happen years ago, but now it's happening. And we've got to get those kids, they're our next generation. We got to get that system taken care of, and we got to give them opportunities for mental health counseling and things like that. That can be done in telehealth. And without that, I don't believe that there's ever going to be enough availability. So I'm very much in favor of telehealth, especially at the school level where we can get kids some mental health counseling.
Okay, thank you. Senator, your comments on that?
On telehealth, so yeah, I think there will be permanent funding for telehealth eventually here. It's a new topic, a new thing that's going on that isn't fully understood by the legislature just yet. That's why it was a temporary funding. But I think the way things look, it'll be made permanent. I don't know how we'll avoid making it permanent. I don't know where that money comes from or how it gets spent. But the telehealth is certainly something I think it's here to stay. We've got one right here in Carroll with Mrs. Galing, who runs a mental health program specific for rural schools, which I think is outstanding. What I don't have a very good understanding myself is how did we get here? I'm hearing numbers like 1 out of 5 children in our schools today will have a mental health issue, and how did that happen? Has it always been 1 out of 5 and we just never noticed it before, or is that something new that's going on? I don't really understand that yet, and I'm not going to become a psychologist or a physician anytime soon. So hopefully somebody can give me the short school on how that's going to work. But yeah, I do think it's going to be made permanent at some point in time. Maybe not this legislative session. But.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Another question that fits pretty much in, and both of you have alluded to it a little bit, and the question is mental health and behavioral health has been top on hospitals' minds through the pandemic. They have really had to step up and address those issues. It's the legislator and the state looking to find funding for these services. Where do you stand on the issue, and what are you willing to do? Senator, I'll let you continue on with your comments.
Yeah, I'm aware of the issue. I don't know the extent of the issue other than anecdotal conversations with the hospital and other locations. So I don't know what the plans are for funding of those programs, but I know here at St. Anthony's they've talked to me about there really isn't a good mental health facility around, and so they take in a lot of those folks that have mental health crises. I do think some of this is pandemic related. There's no question that there's a lot of studies that, businesses being shut down are having an impact on people, business owners worried about how in the world they're going to pay their employees or how they're going to keep their businesses open, how they're going to pay the rent, et cetera. These are all issues that become a problem for people's mental health. So I don't know the answer to that, Hubert, but I know it's a topic of discussion, and we'll try to help figure something out.
Okay, thanks, Senator. Representative Best, you have comments on the mental health and behavioral health and funding?
So since I've been elected, mental health has been an issue. It's always been an issue, and it always will be. What we've got to realize is that there has to be more funding, I believe, for mental health than what we're doing right now. And counties right now are taking on the brunt. The state could certainly help if that is the will of the legislature, and I hope it is, that we can kick in a little bit more. The governor's idea of the 1 cent sales tax, which she's taken off the table for this year, kind of worked on that a little bit, tried to take a little bit of the, it took a little bit of the county's responsibility away as far as the dollars and let the state come in, so the property tax payers weren't getting hit as hard. But at the same time, the situation is, in some cases, has been ridiculous. I know in some hospitals around the state of Iowa, somebody who came in with a acute mental health emergency sometimes was put in the back of an emergency room where they could sit until they could free up space in a place like Cherokee or wherever that was built to handle that. And that's we got to get that taken care of, and hopefully we're making a little bit of progress on that. But I think the bottom line is we just don't have enough acute care beds in the state of Iowa, period. And so that's an issue that I think is lingering, has been there for a long time. I think we have made slow progress, but hopefully we can make a little bit faster progress to get help for those people. Having a mental health condition is no different than having a bad knee or a bad hip. You can't help what happened to you if you are victimized by that. And so I think we have to look at it that way and try to get help for these people.
Okay, thank you. Are either one of you looking at, you did make a little reference to that representative about helping the counties out with mental health and taking some of the burden off of the property tax. Is that going to be more of a top priority issue down there?
Well, if it's a priority, and I think there's a lot of legislators that would like to do that. Obviously, it's finding the money, and with the 1 cent sales tax that the governor proposed, that was going to fund some of that being taken off the table for this year. I would actually rather have had us tackle that on a way that we would have to raise the penny, that we would use additional resources to slowly kind of bridge that gap and have the state come in and help with those mental health things. And the counties are doing the best they can. But Iowa's program, I think, is a little bit unusual for what we do compared to what other states do as far as putting it on the local taxpayer. So, I would like to look at ways that we can do that without raising the 1 cent sales tax. We'll do it. So.
Okay, thank you. Senator, have you got any comments that you want to make on that issue?
Yeah, I did see in the senator's budget request an extra $15 million each of the next 2 years towards mental health. I really don't have an idea of how far that $15 million is going to go in addressing that issue. I was actually surprised that the 1 cent sales tax was taken kind of off the table, but in conversations I've had with people, the 3/8 of that 1 cent sales tax increase had already been earmarked for certain activities, trails and water quality, et cetera. And then the other 5/8 of a cent was not earmarked. Like I said, there's no shortage of people looking for ways to spend money. And that's everybody has spent that 5/8 of a cent 5 times over, I think, in their minds. But the idea that I had heard and was pushing forward was, if we were to have that sales tax increase, that other 5/8 of a cent needs to go to property tax and income tax relief. It really doesn't make a lot of sense to me that mental health issues should be borne by property owners in a county. You really don't have any correlation between property ownership and mental health issues. And some counties may be inundated with mental health issues, and other counties, like this one's got some decent areas to be able to treat some mental health issues. And so other counties send their people here. Who's paying for that? How's that taken care of? Anyway, it's probably more than I know about the subject at this point, but I do think that if there's a way to take this off of the property taxpayers, I'm very interested in talking about it.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, can I add something?
Yes, go ahead, Representative.
To allude to what Craig said, the governor's intent with the 1 cent is to make it tax neutral. So, I mean, that is something that we should take into account also. So just wanted to add that.
Okay. Okay, and another question and relates to spending in terms of community development programs funded by the state, REAP, derelict buildings, and community catalyst, statewide trails fund, and so forth. Do you see stable funding for these programs, increases, or any move towards reduction or elimination of these grant programs? Will the governor's proposal for increasing the workforce housing tax credit fly? What new programs to help small towns are being discussed? Let's see, I guess, yeah, your turn.
Okay. Craig, I think I'm correct on this, and you can help me out, but it seemed to me like when I saw her budget, pretty much everything was status quo, but I didn't see much that was being reduced or taken away as far as any programs. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, okay. So that part of the line item that I did see, I believe, I'm sure it was looking at status quo for almost everything that we have in that area, which I would definitely agree with, that we at least need to make a status quo, even if we are unable to increase some of these, but I don't see any reduction coming that I know of. And as taxpayers, we have to remember that as rural taxpayers, many of these things really help rural Iowa and help small towns. And so for us to eliminate any of these programs, I think is a problem that's going to affect rural Iowa. And so I believe that we do need to keep them. We need to keep them funded, and so I want to see that happen.
Okay, Senator.
Yeah, I'll say the same thing. Again, this is the LSA's analysis of the budget, and I haven't gotten through it all, but there is, and I think it's probably downloadable, but page 13 talks about the budget overview and the governor's significant general fund appropriations changes. I don't see any increases or decreases in that particular area of note at this point, and they may be buried in some of the details of some of these questions or some of the budget changes, and that I just haven't quite figured out just yet. But I think there's definitely a focus on rural initiatives going forward, but I don't know that there's a significant amount of money that's being added to the budget for those just yet this year. Part of this question was about, do you think the workforce housing tax credit is going to fly? I don't know the answer to that. We're going to have to figure it out. We just got this budget. We need to spend some time analyzing it, and then we'll get back to you on that.
Is there any thought of thinking about prioritizing some of the fundings that have been going on for a long time and see if we need them or need to reduce them or that kind of thing?
There will be, from my standpoint, yes. Is there talk about it? I don't know that there's a lot of talk about it. there's always talk about spending more money, but there's
I know, but what about
talk about getting rid of it?
Yeah,
that would be a focus for me.
Representative Beth?
No, it hasn't really been a big issue that's been talked about a lot. I think the money that is going to be spent on broadband is obviously it is a zero-sum game we play down there, and so the money that goes towards broadband, we're going to have to find somewhere to make that money available. And so, honestly, I was the economic development budget chair for 3 years, and during that time, I did see that a lot of the things that are under that, all those line items that we use there did go to things that they were legitimate and they had a function. And so as we look at each one of them and continue to, I believe that money in Iowa is fairly well spent. I would think that there's always room to look at ways we can improve and make sure that our bureaucracies, if you will, within the state of Iowa are spending that money wisely. And Craig, and you may be interested in this because I know this is something that is really quite interesting, is those economic development subcommittees that meet on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Oftentimes they kind of delve into what those programs are doing. They do need to come in front of us once in a while and justify on a yearly basis, justify what they're doing. And then sometimes some tough questions are asked in those meetings too. So that's one way that we can really kind of vet those programs.
I want to add to that, Hubert, just licensing and regulations are something that we have had a lot of focus on. I know it was a focus long before I got there, but and the governor mentioned it in her speech about reciprocity for other states to be able to bring, if you're a hairdresser, and maybe that's the wrong terminology, cosmetologist, how's that? If you're a cosmetologist from Missouri and you came to Iowa, you'd have to redo all of your licensing. And, what's the point in that? Why do I want to move to Iowa now if I've got to redo everything that I've already done? So licensing reciprocity was something that got covered last year. And the governor said that to signal to everyone that Iowa's open for business. So that's kind of along the lines of getting rid of some of those programs. And I was just reminded of, in my mind here, I'm from Illinois originally. And back in the, 50s, I think, maybe in the 60s, the Dutch elms, beautiful tree that was lined all the streets in that area. We got Dutch elm disease. And so the city of Rockford put in parking meters downtown. That was their way of funding the Fight Dutch Elm Disease project, which failed. But 40 years later, the parking meters were still there. And getting rid of programs are difficult. They did finally get rid of those things, but it took years and years and years to fix that issue. It's easy to start new programs. It's easy to spend money. And for whatever reason, it's difficult to end ones that aren't working. So I'm glad to hear about that, Brian, and I definitely will have my ears on that.
Okay, thank you. Well, now I'll switch gears a little bit and go, do you see any more funding for business disaster relief coming? And so now I'm asking for more money. So I guess this was one of the questions. So Senator, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I know that there's a lot of talk of tax relief and things of that nature. And of course, there's federal issues or federal funding that's coming yet again. I haven't seen any specific recommendations or programs for disaster relief. It doesn't mean that they're not buzzing around there. I haven't seen them yet. I don't know that I've got a good answer here for you.
Okay, Representative.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have an answer either. I think it's something that, as of right now, there hasn't been talk of it, but there might be talk in leadership that I'm not aware of. That we're in that first week. Sometimes like Craig said, not a whole lot gets done. There will be a lot more information, and we'll be talking about a budget a lot more in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. One of the other questions that was submitted is A Federal Reserve study found that nearly half of American households do not have enough savings to cover a $400 emergency expense. Prize-linked savings programs give incentives to individuals to save by entering them into a drawing for a cash prize each time they put money in savings. The money saved is never at risk. If anyone doesn't win the cash prize, they still keep all the money they've saved and any interest earned. Would you support a bill that permits banks and credit unions to offer these programs in Iowa? Representative, I guess it's your turn to go first.
Yeah, that question kind of came way out of the blue. I never even thought about that before. And if something had to be done in statute to allow this to happen, I don't see any problem with it. I think it actually sounds like a good idea, but I never say 100% that I would back something or that I wouldn't until I see if there's any secondary things that you don't think about up front. So sometimes things like this have unintended consequences, and so I'd like to see if there's any of that. But to me, anytime you can reward somebody for saving money, why not? That's good for everybody.
So,
Senator?
Yeah, I think that the issue has to do with raffles, basically, right? If you have this came from the credit union. The Credit Union Association has brought this up to me, and I think the issue has to do with laws regarding raffles, because in Iowa's raffle law, you either have to have a license to do it, or there can't be any commitment on the part of the person involved, right? In other words, if I walked into Fairway and they had some kind of a drawing going on, I could just fill out my name and send it in. They couldn't require me to buy something to be able to be part of that. And in the case of the bank, you are required to put money into their account and have an account to be eligible for this. I think that's the problem. And I remember years ago when you open up a new account, you get a toaster, right, or something like that nature. Now this is not everybody's going to get a toaster. Everybody's going to get into a drawing for one. I think that's what the issue is. I don't offhand have a problem with that, but I do know it was an issue the credit union has brought to my attention a couple of times now. And devil's in the details. I don't have an issue with it, but what other doors do you open and what other doors do you close when you make changes like this to the law? I don't know.
Do you think, Senator, that the credit unions and the lobbyists for the credit unions will be giving you more information and on down the road, or?
Undoubtedly. Yeah, the Credit Union Association has been vigorous in trying to get my attention and sending me things and calls of that nature. So there's quite a few issues between banks and credit unions. It's like the Hatfields and McCoys, I think, at sometimes. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay, then I got a couple of questions with dealing with education. Locally, considering the role of Kemper in the education of students, there is pressure for the governor to support private schools. Do you have additional details on how large the education savings accounts for parents, families could be, or other details on the school choice proposal? Senator, I guess it's your turn first.
So I don't have the details, but I know that there's a big push for education savings accounts, which would indirectly help Kemper and other parochial or non-public schools. Honestly, I'm not in this for, don't get me wrong, folks, I'm not in this for Kemper. I'm in this for the kids. And if the kids learn better at one school versus another, I want to help them find ways to do it. As the governor said, it shouldn't matter what your zip code or your income level is to be able to get a good quality education. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the public education system either. It just doesn't work for everybody. There's alternative schools, and I sent my kids to Kemper for a reason, and there was nothing wrong with the Manning schools. It just wasn't working for us. So that's what the ESA is about. I haven't heard anything about school vouchers or things of that nature just yet. And again, the devil's in the details on some of these things, but I know there's definitely some talk about the ESAs.
Representative?
Yeah, I really don't want to comment on it too much until we find out what the actual dollar figures are and what the numbers are going to be. I think until then, there isn't really a whole lot I'd have to say about it right now.
Okay, there's nothing in the legislation that you see coming up?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's going to be things coming up for sure. There's going to be a lot of talk. There's no doubt about that. But the specifics of it just hasn't been laid out there. So. Okay.
Another issue on education question that came in. Looking at the last dollar scholarship, it is something you feel will continue. Is it something you feel will continue to be supported? There are some glitches where students may not be eligible for the last dollar scholarship for administrative reasons. Do you feel there are things that being done to clear some of that up? Representative, I guess you're first this time.
Yeah, I hope we have actually made some progress on that. I know at one time there was a kind of a glitch where I believe if you've got an LPN or if you've done something in nursing, graduated and went to work for a year and then wanted to come back and receive your RN, you were ineligible under the last dollar scholarship. And I thought that is something that we had cleared up, but if we haven't, we need to. That's exactly what the last dollar scholarship is for. We shouldn't penalize somebody who went into maybe less of a degree, like a one-year degree, wants to come back and get a two-year degree. They shouldn't be held responsible for their financials when everybody else has been able to go in and get that last dollar scholarship. So if that hasn't been cleared up, it needs to be, definitely.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
All right, so the last dollar scholarship, as I understand it, anyway, if you're a recent high school graduate and you want to take some classes at DMAC, in particular, DMAC is here in Carroll is one of them that's eligible. There's a specific list of schools and a specific list of academic courses that you can, not the courses, but the degree that you're working toward that it applies to. And basically it's high demand jobs, things that were short people, long demand, that if you want to go take these classes, first you have to get your federal funding wrapped up in any state aid, other aid that you have. Once you get all your aid together, if you're short on funding, this last dollar scholarship is meant to fill that gap and give you those last dollars that you need to make sure it happens. Until Brian just spoke, I was not aware of what those issues are, and I don't know if there are other issues that we need to clean up. But it's a neat program, and I do know that there was in the governor's budget, there's an extra $10 million that she's asked for to appropriate to that program. So there's definitely interest in continuing the program, and I do think it's very good for our community colleges to continue that program. I'm a big fan of the community colleges.
Okay, thank you. Now switching gears a little bit to a different subject. Do you feel confident that our election process is secure in Iowa, or is there additional work to be done to make sure we continue to keep the confidence of voters in Iowa elections? Senator?
Yeah, so I think Iowa did a pretty good job in this last election, and there's been a number of changes to the election law over the last 4 years or so, and I think each time that they make an election law change, there's an outcry that you're trying to suppress the vote, and each time that those changes go into effect, the voter turnout is increased. So I don't know who's being suppressed by those things, but the election process itself, I've got great confidence in what happened here in Carroll and in the surrounding communities. I don't know every county in the state of Iowa how well it's been done, but I didn't see or haven't heard of any real outcries of any problems. The Marionette Miller Meeks Rita Hart race in Iowa here was close to 400,000 votes and 6 votes difference between the two. And so when you get an election that's that close, that's when the microscopes come out and people start looking at, well, this isn't right and that's not right. So what we found in that particular case is one county does a recount one way and another county does the same recount a different way. And both of them probably are logical, but it'd be good to have some standardized ways of doing the recounts. And you wouldn't notice that in a normal year if there was 20,000 votes difference instead of 6. I think some changes that are probably going to be coming up is tightening up the time frame, the timeline, so that we're not voting a month in advance. Maybe it's a couple of weeks in advance instead, and maybe tightening up the postal postmark so that we're not waiting 7 or 10 days after an election to count a vote. I think that those things will get tightened up, and it's not to suppress the vote, it's to ensure that we've got good voter integrity, a good vote, election integrity, I guess.
Thank you, Senator. Representative?
I think we've done a good job also. This issue, there's certain things that you have in your wheelhouse and some things that you don't as much. This is an issue that I believe is ultimately very important, but to say that I'm an expert on it, I will not tell you that. I do know that a person who I trust very much in the Iowa House, Bobby Kaufman, is kind of the person that we go to with all the expertise and who talks about this a lot, and I think he does a good job. I do think that Iowa did a really good job this past year, but I agree with Craig. As standard as you can make the procedure with counting across the counties in the state, the better off you are, just for fairness and to make sure that it's a subjective or an objective goal that you're reaching. Everybody gets the same opportunities to win or lose an election based on just a way of doing it. It's the same everywhere is obviously the most crucial thing. And whenever you don't have that from county to county, I think you do have more of an opportunity for there to be inconsistencies are definitely going to be pointed out in those issues. So, yeah, but I do think overall Iowa has done a good job.
Okay, thank you. Okay, another question is, given COVID restrictions on events, including this one today, how do you plan to stay in communications with your constituents to deliver information? Brian?
Nothing will really change. Obviously, we've got, we do weekly, or I do, and I think everybody does, we do weekly emails. I have an email group of probably a couple hundred. Anybody can join that if they want to. If you do want it to be on the email list, it's just emailing brian.vest@legis, legis.iowa, spelled out, .gov. So it's brian.vest@legis.iowa.gov. LEGIS is short for legislature, and just ask to be put on that list. We also reach out to each newspaper in the district and give them the information from the week previous. And so mine will be coming out Monday. I always put mine out on Mondays, and then you can take a look and see what we've got going. And that's probably the best way to find out what's going on with the legislature from my point of view and what I'm seeing down there.
Okay, Senator?
Yeah, so everything's changed for me since I'm new here. My intention is to have a weekly newsletter as well. I did put mine together Thursday, and I was supposed to go out Thursday afternoon, and there's been some technical complications of getting that out through MailChimp, but we've got all the local newspapers and radio stations, media included on that as it goes out the door. So as soon as possible, we'll get that corrected. And same as Brian, if you want to be on that list, just send an email to me at craig.williams@legis.iowa.gov. In fact, everybody in the legislature is first name dot last name, unless at legis.iowa.gov, unless of course they got a similar name to somebody else. So then they make some changes there. But anybody you want to communicate with in the legislature, that's the way to do it. And I'll get you on the list as soon as I figure out how. Otherwise, email is always open, and my phone number is published, and people are welcome to call me anytime. Be kind, and it's amazing. I was thinking this morning, I feel like the rhinestone cowboy because I'm getting cards and letters from people I don't even know, and I was counting emails yesterday, and it's a little over 100 just from yesterday. So it's difficult to get back to everybody. But a lot of them are form letter ones that show up, and somebody copied and pasted, and I know what it says, so off it goes and noted. I know what you're talking about. If you really want to talk to me about something or want to send me an email, the suggestion would be get to the point, keep it short and sweet. I've got a couple of copies of War and Peace that have been emailed to me in the last few days, and I'm sorry, I can't read it. It's just too much. So you need to get to the point, get it done fast, and I'll definitely do my best to address it. I've had a couple of interesting topics come up from some constituents here that we've been addressing already. So I'm here to serve.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's the questions that were sent in and that kind of stuff. And there's a little time, and so since I'm the moderator, I guess I'm going to pull a little weight and ask you some ag questions since I am concerned about that. And I guess one of the questions is how is the funding for the diagnostic lab coming, and is that going to be continued in this legislature?
Thanks for the warning on that, Hubert. I appreciate that.
Well, I didn't know that I was going to. I thought maybe we'd have more questions from people than we had time for, so I didn't forewarn you on my personal question.
Here's what I see in the governor's budget on the major budget overviews. The Iowa State University Student Innovation Center, an extra $13.4 million appropriation. That's on a multi-year project. And then the College of Veterinary Medicine, which I think might include what you're talking about there, $12.5 million appropriation for the RIF for 2022. That's an appropriation as part of a 6-year, $63.5 million project. Now that may or may not be included what you're asking, but I have heard of no desire or no efforts to reduce funding for what you're talking about with the diagnostic center. But
no, I don't know of anybody who doesn't agree with the governor. The diagnostic center, I think, is very safe, and the $12.5 million that's been recognized, I think it's the RIF is going to carry through with that, I'm sure.
Okay.
You got it.
Okay. What about funding for water quality and research?
You're next, Brian.
Yeah.
Next? Okay. Water quality, it's recognized as being an issue in the state of Iowa, obviously. And I think the state and the Ag Committee are doing the best they can. Now, I can't tell you the exact amount of money that's being put into water quality. I don't know the number, but I know it's pretty substantial. And I think that money is always going to be pretty safe. That it's always going to be in place for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know the exact numbers on that, but I do know it's always a topic of conversation, and nobody wants dirty water. Nobody wants to have their kids and family drinking dirty water. We're all aware of the issues that happened with Des Moines Water Works a couple of years ago, and the impact that had on them, and the impact that it has on farmers as well. The corn needs nitrogen to grow, and that's an issue that puts nitrogen in their groundwater, and we need to keep an eye on it. I know there's a lot of new technologies available and coming out. Some of the projects I've worked on over the last few years as an ag consultant, that I can't really talk about things that might be 5 or 10 years out yet, that will be very interesting with regards to water quality.
Okay. With that, it looks like our time is up. I want to thank Representative Brian Bent and Senator Craig Williams for being here today. I'd like to thank the City of Carroll for hosting the forum. Then I'd like to thank the members of the Carroll Chamber of Commerce Legislative Committee for organizing the forum. Thank you everyone who submitted questions. A reminder of the upcoming forums: Saturday, February 6th, Saturday, March 6th, and Saturday, April 10th. Again, thanks everyone for listening, and I hope that this has been informative for everyone in the audience. Thank you.